and we've got 4 lovely candidates here ready to give some speeches and answer some questions. Basic format of this is that we're going to have some 2-minute speeches from everyone. Then we're going to have 2 general questions that will be addressed to all 4 candidates. And then I'm going to ask 2 sets of targeted questions based on each candidate's manifesto. So we'll do 1 round of targeted for everyone, and then another round. Any technical issues throughout this, we'll make it clear. Just if a candidate gets cut out, we'll wait for them and extend the time. So you guys don't have to worry if you're having any issues. No problem there. I think if you guys are happy, we can kind of go into the speeches. Just some general rules: if you guys can mute yourselves. If you go over time, I am going to have to kind of cut you short with the mute button, just because we've got a lot to run through and want to make it fair for everyone. But other than that, yeah. So the first up is Artemis.
Should I just go? Hi, I'm Artemis. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm a 4th-year physicist at Corpus. Every point on my manifesto is based off of a lot of my personal experience while here at Oxford. So I think the main point, which I think everyone agrees with and everyone will probably hear a lot of, is about like safe nights out, a lot of prevention and supporting any kind of victims of sexual violence, and just making sure that everyone feels safe. I do want to draw attention that like the processes for complaining and reporting both sexual and non-sexual harassment and violence differ from college to college, which is something I think we all really want to change. Apart from that, I'm very keen to expand the current SU initiative on sexual health. I'm currently actually working with a startup for sexual health and well-being, which I'd love to talk more about, but we haven't officially launched yet, so I don't think I can say anything there. But it is very important and exciting to me. I also want to do a lot of work in increasing the amount of support for people with eating disorders, because I think the pandemic's made a lot of people relapse or a lot of people develop eating disorders, and I know I have as well, and the current level of support is just kind of unacceptably low, I think, where a lot of students, like, they're not serious enough to get help, they don't have a serious enough case to get help, but also there's no one equipped to deal with less serious cases. And lastly, and definitely not leastly, I think the state of transphobia in the university really, really needs to be addressed. And so as trans rep over the last year, I've kind of seen firsthand the effects of all the transphobia and what it has in students. And so, yeah, the main thing I want to do on that is the 2021 trans report, because the 2018 one was such a massive force for change. And yeah, thank you.
Lovely, thank you, and great for keeping in time, and always good, always difficult to go first, so thank you. Grace, over to you.
Great. Hi, I'm Grace. I'm a 3rd-year historian at Bennett's, and I use she, they pronouns. I'm running because I want to secure change for all women and anyone whose identity partially includes women. So when I was a fresh at Bennett's was midway through its transition of accepting female students, and there was still one year group that was entirely male. I've seen the benefits that inclusion can bring, and I'm honoured to have been a part of that as our college's LGBTQ+ officer for the past 2 years. I've succeeded in flying the pride flag in Bennett's for the first time ever. They said it couldn't be done, but I did that. And it's that drive that's carried me through, and it's this drive that's made me stand for VP Women, because I want to continue to make genuine change. My driving ethos is inclusion, and it underpins all of my manifesto promises. I pledge to support trans and non-binary students with their interest in everything that I do as a top priority. Plus, I will lobby for student parents. And in addition to spearheading a university-wide awareness campaign, I will ensure that freshers' workshops discuss the fetishization of minority women. I want to make college welfare fairer by subsidising welfare products by college need, and I'll take a similar approach to dental dams. Information about sexual health services in the UK will be provided to international students, and I'll continue the SU's valuable work in lobbying for survivors of sexual assault. Oxford must be a safe environment, and this is why I'm pledging to create an accessible map of unsafe incidents around Oxford and provide support and resources for event runners to run safe events. Everyone needs to thrive rather than just survive, and I'm the only candidate with a specific plan for outcomes. I'll investigate how COVID has impacted the attainment gap, and I'll promote mentoring schemes for women to tackle career inequalities. My manifesto is wide in scope, but every point is a promise. I've chosen them because I believe that they're important and achievable within a year. I won't have to cherry pick if I'm elected. I've advocated for women in every position I've held, including positions that weren't specifically made for that purpose. A vote for me is a vote for an SU that supports all women.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, and over to you, Hannah, whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm running to be your VP Women, as I'm passionate about connecting with, supporting, and promoting all women from all backgrounds, and those who wholly or partially identify as women. VP Women is a position that I've had my heart set on since my first year, partly inspired by the fact that Hilda's, my college, was the last all-female college in the university. And my passion for this role is brought to light through my carefully considered, achievable, and realistic manifesto points. If elected, my pledges are to standardise, centralise, and take a firm stance on sexual assault and violence, champion LGBTQ+ rights, and raise more awareness about the transphobia that exists within the university, promote women's mental health and well-being, and notably providing resources on promoting healthy relationships, collaborate with and put the onus back onto the student body to lobby inclusivity and freedom of expression, continue to work on the work of the current VP Women to provide more accessible sanitary products and also educate women on sustainable sanitary products, as well as harness a positive environment amongst the student community. I will be devoted to removing systemic barriers that can adversely affect the lives and diverse needs of Oxford University's women students, as well as creating a climate of a positive engagement with key women's issues amongst the whole of the student community. Oxford needs to prioritise inclusivity and transparency, which I will be driving for as my time as sabbatical officer. During my time at Oxford, I have tirelessly worked to make active change on a college, university, and personal level. And so I am confident that I will continue to create a positive change on a wide scale. It will be my pressing duty as your committed and compassionate VP Women to provide women and non-binary people with a platform so their voices are heard.
Lovely, thank you. And last, but of course not least, Kemi, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I think all of the candidates today have made such strong points, and similar to Artemis, I would say that many of the points that I made in my manifesto were based off of my own personal experience. As a Black woman and also as a queer woman, intersectionality drives everything that I do, and the fact that women of color and queer women, and of course non-binary and trans women, are obviously disproportionately affected by everything that everyone else experiences. For me, I think I am probably the most qualified to talk about sexual violence and addressing it, because I spent the last year as It Happens Here's co-chair, and prior to that, I was women's officer for my college, Wadham. And I think that prepares me more so because I understand how it is for student politics from a collegiate level, but also a university-wide level. I have worked with the current and the previous VP for Women. I understand the SU and the Student Council because I have that experience. But on top of that, I do have the drive and dedication, as you can see from my manifesto. The main things I want to focus on is a review of the consent workshop to include things such as coercion, which links to the staff student policy ban, which I have been pushing for since I started my time as It Happens Here's co-chair. And on top of that, I think I'm the only person to also mention misdiagnosis in women and the destigmatization of the counselling service, which I think is a big issue, because a lot of...
Off a little bit there, sorry.
Oh, no.
If you want to... or...
yeah, can I keep going?
Well, it's probably, yeah, just for fairness sake.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some submitted questions. So these are for all of you to answer, but we're going to answer in the same order that we did the speeches. So Artemis. Cool. So welcome back, everyone who's watching. We're now going to move on to some questions for the VP for Women candidates. Just in case you guys wonder why I'm holding up a highlighter, it's their 15-second warning for the answers. So firstly, we've got 2 general questions, and we'll go in the same order again. So this general question is, how do you feel that your prior experience has prepared you for the role, and how does this experience make you an effective lobbyist? And Artemis first.
Hi. So I spent, in my second year, I was the Corpus Equal Opportunities President. And so on a very college level, I did a lot of lobbying. And across the entire spectrum of intersectionality, we did reforms of the welfare system, of trans welfare, of disability things. And I've also spent the last 2 years working a lot in trans activism with other people throughout the university. And as a member of the trans community myself, I do feel like I am the most qualified candidate possibly for any of the SU roles to really push for change in the way transphobia is addressed and the way trans people are treated in this university. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Grace, over to you. Let me know if you need me to read it again, but it should be in the chat.
That's all right. So over my time as a student for the past 3 years, I've held a variety of roles across my college and outside of my college. And I think probably the most significant one in terms of lobbying experience has been my role as JCR LGBTQ rep. It's no secret that Bennett's has a sort of aura of being very conservative around it. We have the Catholic connections, which makes things kind of difficult in terms of pushing public support. So the past year, especially, has been very significant in terms of how I've had to lobby. I've had to have very many difficult conversations with college leaders, and that's given me a lot of experience. And then my other roles outside of that in women's sports, as social secretary, has given me wider experience in terms of general women issues.
Great, thank you. And Hannah, whenever you're ready.
Hi, yeah, so in my time in Oxford, I've spent a lot of time in college working towards and lobbying women's rights. So in my second year, I was the head rep of my college, which meant that I ran Freshers Week, and I promoted an anti-spiking, an anti-sharking and an anti-sharking campaign. And I set up a welfare room every evening so students could come and speak to me. And I think that says a lot about my compassionate nature and desire to help people, which I think is a big part of the role. I'm also a member of Oxford Feminist Society, and I'm on the committee for that. And so I helped make a lot of the decisions and write a lot of the social media posts to express feminist issues. And I have helped lobby for many campaigns there. And I'm also part of many access initiatives, so I feel like I'm confident into promoting women from all backgrounds.
Lovely, thank you. And Kemi, again, whenever you're ready.
Hi, yeah, in both my roles as co-chair of It Happens Here and Wadham's Women's Officer, it's meant I'm very good at organizing projects and events such as career talks, vigils. Last week, I hosted and organized and called a lot of people for an intersectionality panel talking about sexual violence. And it has also meant that I have been able to carve out a space for women of color, especially, but also queer women in these discussions. And I push for intersectionality in everything I do. As co-chair of It Happens Here, it's meant I've had meetings with basically like every important person in the university. So I know how to hold my own. I know how to be assertive. And I know how to challenge the people who make this university run.
Lovely, thank you. Just give you guys a little breather before we move on to the next one. Okay, so this one is, how would you deal with any issues that are controversial or divisive in the student community? And the same order again, over to you, Artemis.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the issues that we all do care about do end up being quite divisive. And I think the most important thing is a matter of framing it in a way where you basically get the most benefits to everyone. I think especially like a lot of the people will be lobbying against on the university body will be often quite reluctant to change. And I've personally found that the best way to get around that is to frame things in a way where it becomes more of like a win-win situation rather than us against them. And I think with other students, it would be a very similar matter. Of course, I do recognize that sometimes when you help a certain community, it may come to the detriment of another. So it's very important to just do like an analysis of like benefits on all sides.
Great, thank you. And Grace, over to you when you're ready.
I think reaching across the divide in divisive issues is really important for making sure that you actually enact change, because no matter how much we want to push things from a certain viewpoint or a viewpoint that we support, it's very unlikely that that will actually cause change if it's a divisive issue. So I think, like Artemis said, it's a matter of framing things in a way that an issue is more acceptable to the other side. But within that, you have to prioritize vulnerable communities and minority voices. And it's their welfare that should be central in any discussions like this. And you can't concede issues of their welfare in discussions like that. So I think you have to have a fine balancing act.
Oh, great. Thank you, Grace. And Hannah, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I think when dealing with controversial issues that divide the student community, I think just as a first point, I think it's good to know as a sabbatical officer the limits of you as your sabbatical officer role as well as you as a person. And so I think knowing when to delegate to different sabbatical officers and speak to different groups to understand their positions, especially if you're not a part of their community, is the most important. And so having good communication skills and being able to be approachable and personable is a way to deal with issues and deal with a sense of divisiveness. As Grace just said, which was going to be one of my points, obviously you have to prioritize vulnerable and minority voices and give them a platform to speak on. And I think it's really important to sort of pass that information on to the university body and know how to communicate differently between university tutors and the university body than to the student body. So there's more effective outcomes overall.
Great, thank you. And Kemi, over to you.
Yeah, everything that was said before, I completely agree with. I think minority communities should lead their own discussion and be the head of these discussions. But also, I think this links perfectly to one of my points in my manifesto, which is including especially women's-based societies like OxFemSoc, like Women in Business, and everyone who's relevant to this conversation, inviting them to the gender equality rep WIMCOM conversation, so we can create clear links between reps, societies, and the VP for Women, so we can make sure that everyone is being represented and being able to speak on behalf of their society and voice their opinions, because these are the people leading the conversations most of the time.
Great, thank you. Give you guys a chance to take a drink of water before we move on to the targeted ones. But again, just for the format of these, I'm going to ask them in 2 rounds. So we'll do everyone once and then everyone again. Cool. So Artemis, this one's for you. So in your manifesto, you discuss harassment support. In what areas do you believe current policy is lacking or not being enforced?
Yeah, so I mentioned before, I think the way instances of harassment and complaints are dealt with vary a lot from college to college. So I think it's really important that we push to unify all these processes and make sure that every single college is following the university's harassment policy to the letter, so that, you know, you're not just unable to deal with an issue because you got sent to the wrong college. I also think, like, especially for cases of discriminatory harassment and, like, especially transphobia, there's often quite a nasty power dynamic, which makes it really difficult for the victims to speak out and initiate the process themselves. So I think it's important to look into allowing other students to make complaints on behalf of others, and yeah, making sure that all college welfare and equality reps are educated on that process, so that they can potentially be that person who is helping the victims to speak out and make change. And I think, yeah, we're all aware of instances where people were discriminated against and didn't feel comfortable speaking out.
Lovely, thank you. Now, Grace, would you be able to expand upon your plan for a map of unsafe incidences around Oxford?
Hi, sure. So something that I've found over the past few years is that whenever there's an unsafe incident, like stalking, someone being followed home from a club, street harassment, cases like that, it does get reported to the college, and then the college informs their students, and then they'll send out an email to colleges in the local vicinity. But there's often a really long delay between that information being sent out and being received by students. So, for down St Giles, where people were being pulled into cars, and the only people who were informed about that were colleges who had accommodation down St Giles, not the rest of the student community, even though Oxford students are very mobile. So it's cases like that which makes me feel the need for a more centralised map of unsafe incidents, whereby people can self-report incidents nearby, and you can opt in for email notifications of things near you, so you're not relying on your college's alertness for your safety.
Great, thank you. And over to you, Hannah. So you wish to contest university policy whereby sexual assault cases are dealt with on a college by college basis. What do you think are the drawbacks of dealing with this type of issue in colleges?
Hi, yeah, this is something that's fairly personal to me at the moment, as I was involved in a situation last term, which involved this situation. And I think dealing with sexual harassment on college by college basis, when college is responsible, so that is where the victim and the perpetrator are in the same college, the responsibility is then delegated to the college's discretion and their policy. And so I think what happens there is that I think the statistic is that 90% of victims actually know who their rapist is. And so if there is a discrepancy between the way the university centralized system would deal with sexual harassment and sexual assault, I think it's really unfair that you could be at St Hilda's College or you could be at St Anne's College, and you may have like a completely different way in the way your case is dealt with. And I think that's really unfair. And if a college has a certain policy which does not value the victim as much, or does not safeguard them in the way that they should be safeguarded, then I think those discrepancies in each college are unfair. And for a system which is a collegiate system, which says that each college is the same, it's not very effective.
Cool, thank you. And Kemi, this one's for you. So what would your approach to destigmatizing mental health services be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my approach would include, well, one, reforming the mental health services, the counseling services, ensuring that there is a lot more efficiency. And I feel like when I have had conversations with members of the counseling service, usually in regards to the sexual harassment service specifically, they have been open to reforms. But two, also encouraging like a video Q&A series, for example, of just like talking about who the staff is, what symptoms and experiences students should look out for, especially in Oxford, and just how the service can help in a specific way. And also, I think it needs to focus on making sure that students come in and afterwards they like helping them to seek future support. And I feel like that's the most significant thing about destigmatizing the mental health service.
Great, thank you. Again, chance for a breather for you guys before I move on to this one. Cool. All right, so back to the start again. Artemis, this one's for you. So what are your plans to expand the current SU initiative on sex education?
Yeah, so I've talked about this with the current VP Women, but essentially, firstly, for a lot of women especially, they get taught nothing about their own bodies. So that's related to things like reproductive health and like any kind of potential medical conditions. People have no idea about those, but even on a very basic level, a lot of women don't know anything about relationships or pleasure or how to talk about sex. And like those basics are all potential for things to be expanded. But especially the LGBT community, there's also a huge lack of sex ed. And I think especially for things like STIs, education, the way it's taught is very heteronormative and cisnormative. And as a queer person, it's really difficult to find any information about that. And yeah, this is very close to my heart since I've seen a lot of friends go through this experience. So that's why I'm so keen on expanding it.
Lovely, thank you. And Grace, this one's for you. So what do you think is the best way to hold the university to account if it does something that is harmful to gender non-conforming and trans students?
I think one of the issues at the moment is that there seems to be a massive disconnect between the university's administrative body and the section that deals with funding and the section that deals with welfare. And I think a lot of the issues, like, for example, the university's funding of Women's Place UK, comes from the university just being very, very separated in that sense. So I think the best way to hold them accountable is to use the VP Women's position on these different committees to make sure that the right people within the university know what's going on. Because I think in a lot of instances, I don't think the university would have supported the things that it supported if they had known the sort of student stance and the backlash that they would have received upon doing so. And I think communicating that is the best way of going forward and making sure that they know what the student position really is.
Great, thank you. And so for Hannah, you aim to better coordinate initiatives between the SU and the student body. Which non-SU initiatives do you think are doing particularly well, and how would you incorporate them?
Yeah, so being a member of Oxford Feminist Society, I've been exposed to many other groups which have been set up on the foundation of championing women's rights. And so I think that initiatives like Oxford FemSoc, which isn't an SU initiative, should definitely be receiving funding for the amount of work, promotion and lobbying they do for women's rights. Initiatives that are sort of stem from It Happens Here, which is an Oxford SU initiative, such as Speak Out Oxford, have been really beneficial to me and some of my friends in learning about how to report sexual assault and the sort of procedures on sexual violence. So funding those sexual harassment lobbying groups. And I think there's an initiative at the moment called Catcalls of Oxford, which is on Instagram, and I think they do amazing work in shedding light on sexual harassment through words in on the streets of Oxford. So I would love to do some working and collaborating with them too.
Lovely, thank you. And again to Kemi, so would you be able to expand upon why you wish to lead a review on the consent workshops?
Yeah, of course. Well, again, as much as everyone has talked about sexual violence on this call, I think I am one of the most qualified because of the time I spent at It Happens Here, and that has meant that I've realized that like it is also very eye-opening to how we fail our students in terms of the consent workshop. I think it's the fact that we don't include stuff like coercion and how you can be pressured into sex and how like 7 no's and then a yes isn't really a yes, and no one really talks about that in the workshop. I would really like, and I've talked about this with the rest of my committee, I would really like an interactive online consent workshop, which a lot of other universities have, like I think Bristol, and it could include just like a test of students knowing where to go for reporting as well, which would mean they would be tested on like, oh, make sure you know who to go to, so then we know that students are protected.
Lovely, thank you. So that brings us to the end of all our questions. I'm sure the candidates are sighing with relief there. But thank you to everyone who's watching. I'd just like to remind everyone that their manifestos are all on the SU website, so go and have a look through there. You can read in more detail some of the points that they've already spoken about. Voting opens tomorrow, so Tuesday the 9th of February at 8 AM, and it will close on Thursday at 6 PM. There'll be a voting link in the bio or caption of this video, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook. So make sure to vote for all the candidates that have convinced you in this husting and have convinced you with this manifesto. And thank you to all of them for answering the questions and for giving their speeches.